Tracy, what number are you on?
She is. It's on the back of your microphone. Look on this on the stand. If you look at the number, it's on the back of the stand right there where the hand is.
The number where?
On the microphone.
Don't worry about it.
4.
4.
Sorry.
I'm 2, so that's a 3.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to The Divide with Marcus C. Williams and Brian McKenzie. We're in here in the studio today. We've got a great show with some new guests that are here today. We've got Tracy DeFlorio, a sitting county legislator in Monroe County Legislature in New York State, and we've got retired Chief Jim Van Bretero from the town of Gates, who's also are you now the chairman or is it the leader of your
chairman of the Gates Republican Party running for the New York State Senate 56th district.
All right, dynamite. Well, we've got a great show and we're going to get ready to jump right into it. We've had a very interesting weekend over the last week. We've seen so many things happen. I don't know if you guys caught the extreme sacrilegiousness that happened at the Olympics. It was an absolutely detestable situation, and I couldn't be more disappointed, I suppose, in the general population of not understanding what's really going on there. You know, a lot of people got offended. They said, oh, it's sacrilegious, it's heresy, they're insulting Christianity and all of this. Now, for me, I'm like, well, maybe they are kind of, but more so, it's them telling you exactly what they're about. They had a pale horseman right in there, okay? You know, they had that. Then they had the horseman on the white horse as well right in there with the nations following behind him. They had I guess you would say it was a display of these drag queens that were, you can't even really call them drag queens, right? Because they're on the lowest pegs of being drag queens. The ones that don't even try, that just look like a man that got shot with a makeup gun. Okay, they were not even trying, and they acted like they were setting up for some sort of Last Supper. And then they had this guy that was landed on the table, and he was either Dionysus or Bacchus or whichever one, but it doesn't matter what other god he was. They were saying exactly what they're doing. They're working to replace traditional Christianity and the values of Judeo-Christianism, specifically Christianity, and they're working to replace them with debauchery, depravity, and all types of evil immorality and stuff like that. So you might say, hey, I'm offended because they were insulting Christians by making fun of us. But it's more than that. They're telling us exactly what they're about. And aside from that, I mean, we've had so much else going on all across the country and all across the world. But we must remember that it's up to us to stand strong and to stand tall in righteousness as we go through this together. Because it's all of us together that are living through this. And it's time for us to unite and stand up for goodness, righteousness, and actual morals and values, and prevent the erosion of Western society. And
even our own paper here in the DNC last week, there's an article up front talking about it's demonizing white Christian nationalism. Actually, they didn't even use white at first.
No, it's just Christian nationalism.
And they're making it as a bad thing. That message is a horrible thing. Since when is Christian nationalism a bad thing? Christianity in general is a bad thing, according to social media, according to our own paper here in the DNC, which I no longer get because of that. But it's
too expensive.
Yeah, it's too expensive and not worth reading. Yeah, I end up sending emails to the people who write the articles all the time, all angry for an hour and a half. So anyways, let's move quickly over to Tracy and the Chief, and let's hear what they got to say about their campaigns, how it's going so far.
Tracy, go ahead.
Hey, thank you. So Tracy DeFlorio here. As Marcus indicated, I am the current county legislator representing the majority of the town of Chilai and running for the 138th Assembly District, which includes Riga, Chilai, Henrietta, and essentially the southwest portion of the city up through Culver, so that kind of eastern side of the city of Rochester. And I just want to go back one real quick minute to what you said about the Olympics. And the one thing that struck me is how sad I thought it was as a child, as a kid. I grew up watching when the Olympics would come on, our whole family would sit around and we'd cheer for Team USA and watch the sports and have that pride and that excitement. And I couldn't imagine, and luckily my children are now over the age of 20, but I can't imagine the horror that some of the parents must have felt, as they gathered their children to sit around and watch the opening of the Olympics.
Even with a wardrobe malfunction where the guy's genitalia pops out, they don't even fix it.
Was it a malfunction or was it
exactly?
I just couldn't imagine these poor moms grabbing at the remotes and turning them off and then having to explain to their kids why. It's just sad.
It's been very divisive from the beginning when you have two basketball players go over there as soon as they land and endorse a specific candidate. I don't think you should be endorsing anyone until after the Olympics because Steve Kerr and Steph Curry, they get off the plane and immediately endorse Harris. And it's like, aren't you representing the entire country? You're not representing half the country or a voting base or a party. You're representing the United States.
Half the country believes Harris should be
true. A portion of the country.
I honestly don't believe that if you are an actor, an athlete, whatever, and you want to have I don't care what your beliefs are, and if you want to sort of advocate in your local community, fine. But you shouldn't, as a media personality, because of your sports or your Hollywood status, should not use that as a platform to promote politics.
Exactly. I agree 100%. First of all, it takes your fan base and slices it in half.
100%.
And it's ridiculous because, first of all, you don't know any more than the average person. You're not a politician. You're an actor. You're a basketball player. So to think their opinion means more than yours or mine is ridiculous. But they think it does.
100%.
So Tracy, who are you running against? Who's your opponent?
My opponent is Harry Bronson.
Okay.
And I know that Jim and I spoke about this earlier today, but it's interesting that our current president has now come out and advocated for term limits for the Supreme Court, but we don't have term limits for elected officials in New York State. Harry Bronson is in year 14 under most term limits. The town of Greece, I did a little research before I came here. Let me circle back. County Monroe has 10-year term limits, which I'm told Harry voted for when he was on the county legislature. The town of Greece supervisor, 12, and the town of Greece town board has 10-year term limits. So why don't our other elected officials in New York State have term limits?
Rules for thee and not for me.
Exactly. When it benefits them.
Exactly. And I think that so much corruption and fraud, in terms of the money in campaigns is a direct result of these politicians that get into political office and just forget to go, at every level.
You no longer become for the people. It's almost for yourself.
For yourself, right. You're representing yourself, not the interests of the people. And when you look at even the campaign donations, it's absolutely disgusting. Marcus and I are working our tails off to get low dollar donations, and we can talk a little bit more about that later. But Harry, the bulk of his money comes from downstate donors.
You ran into that last time too. They had a fundraiser for your opponent down in New York where they raised all that money. But now does he owe people in New York?
It's 100%.
Exactly. And both of your opponents are very liberal in their views, very progressive, correct? I mean, as far as law enforcement goes, and they try to change their views a little bit, but it stays with them as far as it goes. I mean, you're running against
Jeremy Cooney, and I'm on the Republican conservative line. Not that it matters. It's about what do I stand? Give an example. So last week, my opponent is proudly on a Facebook page presenting that big 5-foot check. He's given up $30,000 of our state money to bring in a drag queen to play with the RPO. I love the RPO, and I have nothing against what people want to do would drag things up. But is that good government? Is that really what
Correct.
our income tax for state of New York is to pay? This is where the problem. This is where we get way off. You know, we go off track here, and this is why your budget is 237.
Yeah, how's that benefiting his constituents? How's it benefiting New York State? It's
he's catering to a certain group, hoping to get votes. But anyway, I went on to his finance. You can see all this. It's public. Google Board of Elections campaign. So he's sitting right now on $877,000 for his reelection. And it's gone up significantly. It's another 400,000. But anyway, yeah, as Tracy said, if you look at the donors, it's fascinating to just see who everyone, every union, every political action group wants to be on the donation list for senator.
And so Harry, because he
crazy.
recently became chair of the labor union,
Yeah.
so every labor
labor
union.
union, I mean, and it's thousands, you know, it's not like a $200 donation.
Yep.
But this is the part of politics that's just dirty. It doesn't look right and it doesn't appear right. I mean, every builder in Rochester donates to Jeremy Cooney, and then you see him giving out the money, Constellation Brands and Amazon and all these, you know, they hand out state money like it's theirs. And then they all get they get paid on the backside, you know.
Yeah, they call them donations, but they're not really donations.
Yeah.
There's something you get in return for such a donation. Always.
Pay for play, right?
Right?
Yep.
Exactly what that is. It's so disgusting. And so here you are as a candidate, you know, you're trying to run against somebody, an incumbent, right? And usually the incumbents are well taken care of. You know, it's an uphill battle because you know you've got to overcome that financial difference. You've got to have money to get your message out.
Yep.
Commercials on radio, mailings. If you can't get your message out, people don't know who you are.
Yeah, no matter how good the message is, doesn't matter if people don't know.
Right. And
100%.
but it's so disgusting with the money that comes.
So now, is it true that both of you guys are Republican conservatives?
Yeah.
So that's what we're running on the parties, those two parties.
So you're
Okay,
on
so-
both lines.
So you have to run on a party, right?
Yeah.
You can't just run independent or blank.
No, yeah.
So you pick a party, but you know it's not about the party. I don't care who you are. If you're middle of the road and you're reasonable, want to work together for the good of our community. Nobody wanted that shooting over the weekend.
Mhm.
Nobody
No.
wants that, right? But then you watch the responses that came out of our opponents, and it's thoughts and prayers. Not one action item was mentioned other than thoughts and prayers, and then they don't even have the courage to go stand with the mayor and look like one team and leading from the front.
No, and when something like that happens, the first thing they're going to blame is guns. You know, there's no personal accountability anymore in this country at all. It's you blame guns, you blame something else other than the person committing the crime, because you know that would be taking away the whole victim mentality right there. But it's disgusting to see. You know, a couple of years ago, I was actually when the mayor stepped up and actually said none of the murders last year via guns were from a legal gun, and his own party got very angry with him for saying that.
Yeah.
But he pointed out a fact: there was no legal guns killing anyone in Rochester 2 years ago. It was all from illegal guns.
Yeah.
They don't mention that word in front of it at all. It's always guns,
So
guns.
can we just say that the murders were all committed by criminals?
Exactly.
Maybe
Someone
we should
behind that gun.
Maybe we should start there. I mean, I look at it like this. We've got candidates that are sitting here with us today, okay? And that's awesome. Now, many of our listeners might be independent or they might be Democrat, not necessarily Republicans or conservatives, and they might say, hey, I only vote all one way. I only vote Democrat, or I only vote whatever, or I only vote Working Families Party. So one of the messages that I always share with people is if you're Democrat or you're independent in November, consider voting Republican. You don't even have to change your party to do it. So with you guys, what is the selling point of you guys as candidates that might give Democrats or even independents a real reason to consider voting?
One thing that just to add to what you just said is, as I mentioned earlier, this is my opponent, Harry Bronson's 14th year in the state assembly. And I would challenge anyone that has voted for him in the past to think back and go, is your life better today? Is your life better today than it was 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 10 years ago, 14 years ago? Because if it isn't, then clearly whatever Gary Bronson said he was going to do for you 14 years ago, he hasn't done. Every year they stand up, our opponents stand up and say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to, end homelessness, fight for poverty initiatives, reform criminal justice. Are any of those things better today than they were 2 and 4 years ago? I would say no. So to use another candidate's line from a few years ago, what do you got to lose?
Right.
Vote for Jim or I this time. Send us to Albany. If we don't make your lives better in 2 or 4 years, vote us up. Bring someone new in.
You're absolutely right. Changes don't happen unless changes are made. I mean, it's that simple.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
Yeah. No, look, I can't imagine every Democrat totally believes the party and decisions that be made. And so, you don't, again, you can just vote for whoever you want to. You don't have to follow the party line. And, Tracy and I are just two working class people, no intentions of being career politicians who want to just go down and make change. Common sense, just normal common sense. Things that are just fair and reasonable that your mother would say to you was a good choice. And that's what we're here for, just to be reasonable, not be the party line. And like I said, what do you got to lose? I mean, if you think what's going on right now is fine, if you think, illegals should get preference over the rest of our seniors and veterans, if you think the criminals should have more rights than those poor victims from yesterday, then I guess you're going to continue to vote the way you do. But at the end of the day, you don't have to vote for that stuff, and the only way to change this is.
I think common sense is like the key term right there. Like amongst most conservatives, it's weird's the next new term.
Weird, that's right.
I think when you say that we're the party, or at least your value systems are based on common sense, I think common sense is definitely the key term. I mean, common sense doesn't seem to exist with a lot of politicians these days, or a lot of ideology. It just doesn't make sense, the things that are going on, and common sense needs to be reinstilled as common and not something that's not common. I mean, it's ridiculous to see how theory based some of the politicians are, and those theories don't pan out 95% of the time.
But I think part of the issue is so many of the people that are currently in power have never currently so many of the people that are in power have never lived outside the political bubble.
Correct.
Right? When you look at their careers, they started out right out of college or right out of law school, and were working in some form of government, be it a legislative aide, or counsel to fill in the blank, in politics, right? I have worked in the private sector. I currently work my day job. I'm a county legislator, but my day job is at Bausch and Lomb. I have worked in the private sector my whole life. Well, I shouldn't say my whole life. I worked for a short time for the Department of Social Services when I first got out of college. But Jim has worked and been with the people his whole career. And when you are engaged with people your entire lives versus being in a political bubble your entire life, you have a different lens and outlook.
Real world concept.
Exactly.
One of the important things, and I think that this is probably for everybody listening and everybody in the studio, is something to consider, right? So I was watching this show. If you guys ever read the book or seen the movie Three Musketeers, so the book is The Musketeers. But there was this show. It was a Canadian show. It's a great show. If you get a chance, go watch it. It's called The Musketeers, right? So in it has an episode where they're going to see something about the eclipse. And the prince has this guy that's like a quasi-scientist, because they weren't real scientists back then, but whatever. So he's like a quasi-scientist, astrology type of person. And he goes to show him how to look at the eclipse without hurting his eyes. And he's like, no, sire, your highness, you have to do it like this. He's like, it's common sense. And the king said in a very pithy way, he said, common sense is for the common people. I am the king. And I was like, man, this guy's really funny, isn't he? But I had to sit with what he said. And I said, oh my goodness. he's kind of right.
Yep.
Very right.
So common sense is for the common people. Now, my question is what we're talking about, the reasonable things that we're starting to talk about, is that actually common sense? Because it seems as though a lot of people don't have that type of frame of reference. And that, I think, is concerning. Maybe it's a messaging thing. Maybe we stop saying common sense and we, I don't know what word we use, phrasing we use. Maybe we use something else. Maybe common sense isn't strong enough. Maybe it's like good sense. Maybe that's
I
the way
think it's
to say
a lack of values and morals growing up a lot now too. I don't think you see the same systems in place, culturally across across the spectrum that you did before. People are growing up with these parents who aren't teaching them moral concepts and the values of hard work, the values of safety and respect for people, including law enforcement. You're just not seeing that as much as you did in the past.
There's respect for law enforcement. Did you see that these teenagers stole these 2 cars today?
Yes,
and then they tried to run over the police. They targeted them specifically. And then all of them except one got out on appearance tickets same day, today, still today. It's insane.
There's no accountability for repeat offenders.
Yeah. Now, those laws come from the state assembly and from the state senate. Is that correct, you guys?
Yes.
Absolutely.
And both your opponents were proponents of those laws, correct?
Absolutely. And in fact, we were just talking about this the other day. But Jim can talk about at great length, I'm sure, the opioid epidemic. And back, a few years ago, people would get caught breaking laws that were a result of opioid addiction, right? Be it crime or just using, or purchasing drugs from someone. And they would get caught and they would have 2 choices: go to jail, go to drug court, right? And the people that went to drug court, many of them were helped. They got rehabilitated. Parents, were praying that their kids would get sent to drug court, right, to get help, the help they needed.
Yeah, I remember Jim driving someone down to one time when
So now, though, because that option, no one's going to jail anymore, right? You get your appearance ticket, you get out, right? So instead of going to drug court, these individuals are just getting let out on appearance tickets.
You can either get let out or go to rehab. Which one? I think I'm gonna get let out.
And so they're not surviving to make it to that court.
I mean, even putting $100 bail on someone, the parents can choose. No, I'm not going to pay that because I want my kid to go through withdrawal and stop using drugs. But they don't have that option anymore.
So now, parents are burying their children because that option, that stick isn't there for them to go get help. And the same thing was talked about at Veterans Outreach Center at a breakfast that I was at a few months ago. And Harry Bronson insisted that they were not going to be making any changes to that reform.
Jeremy Cooley said the same thing.
Because, and I quote, it's working.
It's working.
It is working the way they wanted it.
His rationale for why it was working is because now these individuals that aren't getting sent to jail are able to stay at home and continue working and providing for their families.
They're not working or providing for their families.
That's a whole. That's a whole bunch of problem.
But that's in their mind. That's what they think. Exactly. So they think that their new laws are working. Jim and myself do not think they're working. No. So that's I guess a big decision maker, right? Do you think that our current laws are working? If you do, continue on. If you don't, again, try something new this year.
Jim and Gates, you used to. I mean, I know Gates was a big part of that, where people get caught and they'd have that option and get better, and it worked. I mean, it worked. Yeah. You were working with Gates to Recovery for a while with that, and tell us a little bit about that.
So this whole epidemic drove, people were dying. So you're sitting there as an administrator of a department, you say, okay, what can we be doing different to get people into rehab, and especially by the time, usually when you have contact with the police, you've been picked up at the local box store, shoplifting, your 5th PWI. There's no better time than when you have them in your office, you're booking them, to say to them, I tell you what, if you want to go, I'll take you right now. We'll put you in my car and I'll drive you and I'll set up your
right.
That was what we tried to do. That to say
it makes sense.
It makes sense. By the time they come back to court 2-3 weeks later, they don't feel bad no more. Out doing the same behavior.
Exactly.
So yeah, we literally would pack them up if they agreed to go, talk to the family, make the number, call the phones, get the set up bed, 10 o'clock at night, boom, there we go.
And it makes sense to the person too,
You gotta
because
do it while it's hot.
Yeah.
What happened to people ever going to the military? Go to jail, go to the military.
Well, look at the military right now in the recruitment efforts they have towards it. So yeah, it's
no. Hey, listen. After that whole, you got to take the shot or you can't be in the military thing. It's I don't blame anybody for not joining.
and kicking
or
quote unquote
kicking
extremists
Christians
out.
out of the military. That's it. Or people that believe in the country that are patriots. That to me did a great disservice to our military.
The other issue that they have right now is talking to a recruiter not too long ago. They can't pass the entrance requirements.
Yeah.
If you don't graduate from high school, guess what? You can't go into the
Well,
military.
they lowered them.
They lowered it. But they did. They just lowered the qualifications for the ASVAB for the Marines. It used to be like 30. Now it's like 15 or something ridiculous. Like I don't even understand. Like you get 15 points for writing your name. Like it's that
Basic
bad.
literacy.
And that's not
They
even.
can't pass.
And that's not even talking about physical fitness.
No.
Correct.
Oh Lord, what do they say? Like 75% of Americans are out of shape and overweight. Man.
Well, talking about the education system, I mean, that's a huge issue too. I mean, that's a reason for. I mean, not just there's so many issues right now, but the education system. They talk about we need to fix that instead of more law enforcement. That's a big thing from the left, but they're the ones crushing our education system.
The Rochester City School District is failing at almost every level, and
Overfunded, underperformed.
100%. And the one school that was really the standout school, it was East High School, because it was under receivership with the University of Rochester, and in our infinite wisdom of the New York State Board of Education decided that it was too expensive, I guess, or whatever their rationale was, and have stopped that program.
Yep.
So now the one school that was actually, they should have been modeling and using to replicate, they're going to be stopping that program and going back to the same, policies that they had before.
The crazy thing about the whole thing with East is, I don't know that it's popular to me as far as conceptually that we have a private entity controlling any public assets. So a public school being run by a private corporation is very, very foggy and murky to me. But I did like the direction that they were having. Now, you said that lays out a good groundwork for other things to be taken up. Now, it doesn't appear that the city school district is taking any pointers from that, or for that instance, Virtus, which is a private school for boys, which is extremely successful. People are fighting tooth and nail, literally and figuratively, to try to get their children in there. It used to be kind of like how you say a reform school for boys.
Yep.
And now it's going towards even the most competitive children are trying to get in there. The parents are trying to get their children in there. Jim, go ahead.
No, it was interesting. My last couple of years as chief, I got a call from the principal to come over there and introduce myself to the student body. So I heard of it, went over there, met the kids, went back. I wrote them a letter to read over the PA system, thanking them and how impressed I was. And you're tomorrow's leaders. Look at it. Smaller is better. You get these, dress code, discipline, respect, homework first, sports second. It's not brain surgery. You got to get back to the basics, and that's what some of these great schools are doing. Just getting back to the basics.
Back to the basics, boundaries and limits.
Yes, boundaries.
Well, they finally voted to
you
bring
give
the
kids
police in at some of the schools now.
They'll reach them. But when you tell kids there are no standards, you can't reach them.
Yes.
You're all, none of you are going to make it out of here.
Yep.
They're gonna prove you
Yeah,
right.
you have no opportunity,
Yeah.
so why even try? Basically,
Exactly.
the cycle's going to repeat. Just continue this, and instead of the American dream, it's kind of the American. This America is racist. This America, it comes from all that
It's
stuff.
the American malaise. You know what?
It's
Who
the
was it,
victimization.
Carter?
Yeah.
Carter, right? Carter,
Yep.
it's the American malaise. Now everybody feels completely apathetic. Nobody can be concerned about anything because everything is just so terrible. And this is the future that they're selling to the people and to the children.
Correct.
And when the children see that, they're like, well, why would I even bother?
Right. If you don't see a future for yourself, why would you bother trying to put any effort?
Right. No access. They feel like they have no access to the opportunity. Whereas They do. Everyone has access. Your access might be harder because you grew up in a tough situation, but the access is there, and it's getting people to see that opportunity and take that opportunity upon them.
Well, and it's incumbent upon our school systems to show them those opportunities.
Yes.
We're not doing it.
No.
And we have not evolved our curriculum for the 21st century.
That's true.
We are not focusing at all on career and technical education for those students who perhaps don't want to choose to go on to college. Yep. Our school systems are just feeder systems into the state education system, and you're considered a failure if you don't go on to college now. And they make kids feel that way. So to your point, why should they bother trying? Because if they don't have any intention of going on to college, they might as well not bother finishing.
Might as well drop out.
Correct.
Get a job.
Yeah. Or go out on the streets.
Yep. One of the things that we're seeing and witnessing right now, and I experience it all too often, and when I'm working to hire people, because I hire basically entry-level people who have graduated from high school. Right now, with the way that the educational system is, people are unable to do basic stuff. Read, write, arithmetic, the 3 R's.
Yep.
They don't have it. So if they're not able to have those basic things to be able to be successful just in regular life, how could they possibly go out and add to the economy or add into the workforce or end up being a homeowner if they can't do the basic bare bones necessities that they would need to go out into any profession? I mean, if you can't do 1 + 1 is 2, and I'm being, I'm being a little hyperbolic, but I mean, they can't add $10.97 to $12.32, and that's a real thing.
No, that's a real thing. You ever go to a store and do that? Here's the 30 cents. You can wait. Now you confuse them. They already typed it into the register. They can't do that magic.
No. And we see this, and this is the scariest thing ever. People talk about the academic system, and nobody goes to the school board meetings. Nobody goes to the school board meetings. They're so crazy. We just had our one school board chair commissioner, Beatrice LeBron, go to court for threatening one of our county legislature people, because if you go and watch these meetings for the school district, a lot of these commissioners for the school district behave like they're in middle school, not even in high school. They're arguing with each other openly in open forums. They're never really addressing the core issues and principles that need to be addressed in the school system. And when the kids get out of the school system, because there have been no real standards set for them, because there has been no real discipline set for them, because there has been no real, I guess you would call it, concern for their social, emotional, and personal well-being as individuals, for their productivity for the future, they're completely like, well, I don't see anything. Let me go do crime. And then boom, what happens? Now we've got more people going to jail. Now we've got more people lying dead in the street. Now we've got more people, families suffering. And it harms the economy, it harms the people, and it harms and affects everything holistically, which is a word that they like to use all the time. But and they like to use the underlying causes, right? That's another thing they say. What's the root issue? But are they addressing the root issues, like 3rd grade reading scores? What do you think?
Yeah. Well, here's the good news. So in Gates, right? We're a small town, 29,000 people. 3 public schools have been closed over the last 30 years, and 3 of them are now private schools that are like first at the seams. And then I have a Catholic church that just closed and reopened. These private schools are doing great. So, but here's one of the commercials you hear from it's called the Archangel School in Cheyenne. Right? It talks about, do you want your student to soar with the eagles, or do you want them to be indoctrinated?
Yeah.
They say it right in the commercial, indoctrination. I'm like, oh my gosh. But it's funny. We have Hope Hall and Gates, which really it takes some of the toughest cases and students who just can't function in a public school. 140 students, but if you show love and you show, every morning, I get invited to that school. They start off with a big group circle in the cafeteria with the whole student body, and they talk about work of the day, respect, something like that. But that's what it is.
Does that go all the way through 12th grade?
It does, yeah, 1 through 12, and they're all in that same building. And but that's the future, public schools I found so woke, and let's go back to the military recruitment. There's public schools, that won't even allow the military.
Yeah, no kidding.
They won't let them come recruit on career day, I
Yep.
mean, that's how crazy the school districts are getting. But I think a lot of it's also a push from New York State. I know my school, if they're bragging about how they're getting the next electric school buses, like school bus number 10, because the state's giving them. The money,
Yeah.
There's no way they would afford this. It wasn't for the state pushing these school
Oh, and
buses.
I heard they had a lot of issues trying to get the electric company to actually service those buses because they said that originally they didn't have enough electric supply in the area for those buses.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, but a lot of this comes from the government. They push it on, and but it's good to see private schools popping up to replace those public schools.
The one thing that we need to do though, when we get to Albany,
Yeah.
is right now you have to pay for your child to go to public school
Mhm.
and you get no relief,
Mhm.
on your taxes. Perhaps there needs to be a tax credit if for the years you're sending your child to private school to offset that cost of the tuition.
Yeah, that would make sense.
The other issue is for people that homeschool, there's difficulty getting into, say, BOCES programs when your kids are in high school. If they want to do that career and technical route, they're at the back of the waiting list. The other issue is if your child wants to participate in public school after school activities, say sports or any other kind of after school academic program, robotics, etc. If you homeschool, your child's not allowed.
Really?
Which is it is wrong. You pay taxes.
Yeah, you
just
pay the
like
school
anybody
taxes
else.
now. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. So for me, I'm not a childless Catholic. but I don't have any children at this time. And my taxes, they tell me, are that I pay on property are going to the school district. And in this case, I'm in the Rochester City School District. I don't want to pay for those schools because I would, if I had children right now, which I'm going to have children. I'm going to have a lot of children, so I say later on. But I wouldn't send them to that school district, and I don't want to pay for them creating criminals because that's what they're doing because they're not servicing the children the way that they need to. They're creating more criminals, which is affecting me as a business owner, which is affecting me as somebody that lives in the community. And essentially, I'm paying what you could call, I don't know whether you want to call it extortion fees or whatever, to have more crime and suffering and drugs permeate my neighborhood.
And you have to double pay because if you're sending them to private school, you still got to pay those taxes and you still got to pay your fee, for the private school.
So if it's me as somebody, would you guys be willing to fight for me not to have to pay these people any taxes for the schools? Whatever happened all to lottery money? I thought lottery money was supposed to go to the schools.
Yeah, right.
Schools, right?
Yeah.
We do need an overhaul. The city school district per student is one of the legislative breakfasts with the Rochester City School District. Their only solution to every problem is they need more money.
Yeah, more